Ladies and gentlemen, when someone hurts you, the world expects you to cry, to break, to chase, to beg for answers. But what if instead of falling apart, you rose in silence? What if your calm became their confusion, your growth their regret? This isn't about revenge. It's about rising so high they can't reach you. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you're going to learn how to stop reacting and start evolving. When someone wrongs you, it's easy to feel like you need to respond immediately. Your emotions scream for release, anger, confusion, and pain all competing to be heard. But the most unexpected and powerful move is to retreat into silence. Not as a form of passive aggression, but as a declaration of your self-respect. There's a strength in stillness that words can never capture. Choosing not to react creates a space that demands attention. While others expect confrontation, you offer quiet clarity. This isn't about ignoring your feelings. It's about choosing where and how you spend your energy. Silence is not weakness, it's poise under pressure. And in that stillness, something magical happens. You reclaim control. Silence often feels counterintuitive when you've been hurt. You think that if you say the right thing, you'll regain the upper hand or force understanding. But chasing validation from someone who caused the pain never brings peace. It only hands them more power over your emotional state. The real shift happens when you take your focus off them entirely. That's when you confuse the script. They expect a reaction, a text, a confrontation, a breakdown. Instead, you give them your absence. That absence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is powerful. When someone no longer knows what you're thinking or feeling, but they start questioning themselves, your silence becomes a mirror they can't look away from. People aren't used to emotional discipline. They're used to the chaos that follows hurt. The accusations, the pleading, the fights. But when you opt out of that narrative, you surprise not just them, but yourself. You become the calm after the storm before it even starts. In doing so, you redefine the terms of engagement. You make it clear that your peace is not up for negotiation. Every moment you withhold a reactive impulse, you invest in your emotional freedom. You prove to yourself that your self-respect outweighs the need to be heard in someone else's chaos. That is a quiet form of strength, but no less powerful for its lack of noise. This kind of control doesn't come easily. It takes intention to hold back when you want to scream, but restraint is a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows with practice. The first time you choose not to engage, it feels unnatural, but over time you start to notice how much better it feels than the aftermath of a regretful reaction. You begin to see that silence creates space for healing, for reflection, and for insight. And that space is where your transformation begins. It's where your worth stops being measured by someone else's behavior. It's where you remember who you were before they dimmed your light. In that space, something extraordinary happens. You no longer feel the need to be understood by someone who chose to misunderstand you. You stop needing closure from someone who created confusion. The power of that silence is not in making someone miss you. It's in rediscovering the parts of yourself that didn't need fixing to begin with. You detach from the outcome. You realize that your peace doesn't depend on whether someone sees your value. It depends on whether you do. That's the moment everything shifts. Not because you got what you wanted from them, but because you stopped needing it altogether. And still, the silence works in ways you might not expect. It makes people wonder, not because you're playing games, but because they don't understand where your strength is coming from. They search for the chaos they expected, but all they find is calm. They look for cracks, for signs of weakness, but all they see is grace. You're not pretending to be okay, you're becoming okay. You're not waiting for someone to fill a void, you're filling it yourself. The silence becomes a sanctuary, not a strategy. It's no longer about them, it's about reclaiming yourself. Every time you choose stillness over reaction, you reclaim energy that would have been wasted on someone else's drama. That energy can now be used to rebuild yourself, to return to your goals, your passions, your joy. You start to see that the best response to pain isn't retaliation, it's elevation. Not to prove anything, but because rising is your nature. You're not here to fight for someone who didn't fight for you. You're here to thrive in a way that leaves no doubt about your value. And in your rising, you inspire others to rise too. Eventually, silence stops being confusing to others because it starts becoming familiar to you. It becomes your standard, your boundary, your power. You no longer give people the blueprint to how you'll respond. They can't push buttons that don't exist. And that's when true freedom begins. Not in avoidance, but in mastery. Mastery over your impulses, over your emotions, over your narrative. You realize that your story was never about the one who hurt you. It was about how you healed. And you did it without ever raising your voice. The world teaches us to be loud in our pain. But there's something far more commanding about being quiet in our power. Not everything needs to be addressed, and not everyone deserves a response. You learn to protect your peace the way others protect their pride. You learn that not reacting doesn't make you passive. It makes you purposeful. And when you act from purpose rather than pain, everything changes. Your silence becomes a force that shifts the atmosphere. It says more about you than any outburst ever could, and more importantly, it protects what truly matters, your self-respect. So when the moment comes and the pain rises, pause, breathe, step back, let them wander, let them fill in the blanks. Your absence will echo louder than any words could, and while they're busy guessing, you'll be busy growing, not because of them, but in spite of them. That's how you confuse expectations, not by changing who you are, but by standing so firmly in your worth that the game no longer makes sense. Let your silence say what your soul already knows. You're not broken, you're becoming unshakable. ChatGPT said, reacting from pain is one of the easiest things to do when you feel disrespected or let down. It's raw, it's impulsive, and it feels like the only outlet for what's boiling inside. But giving in to that urge often leaves you feeling emptier than before. The real power lies in responding from a place of self-worth, not wounded emotion. Self-worth doesn't shout or beg. It simply exists, strong and still. It doesn't need to be explained or proven. When you lead with self-respect, your actions speak volumes. You don't retaliate to make a point. You stand tall because you know your value can't be shaken by someone else's behavior. You might feel like you need to be understood, like your pain needs to be justified through someone else's validation. But waiting for someone else to recognize your value is the fastest way to lose sight of it yourself. Self-worth means trusting that your feelings are valid even if no one else acknowledges them. It means walking away without closure if staying means abandoning your dignity. It's a silent reminder that your peace is more important than being right. This kind of strength doesn't need a witness to exist. It doesn't need a stage. It just needs you to choose yourself, even when everything in you wants to fight for someone else's attention. It's easy to confuse silence or stillness with weakness, but there is nothing passive about holding yourself to a higher standard. Choosing not to respond emotionally when hurt takes incredible discipline. It means recognizing that your energy is precious and shouldn't be wasted on someone who didn't treat it with care. Emotional self-retrieval is not about denying your feelings. It's about channeling them into something that lifts you instead of drains you. When you act from emotion, you often end up regretting what you say or do. But when you act from self-worth, every step is intentional. Every choice is made with your future self in mind, not your temporary pain. There is something magnetic about a person who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't crumble under rejection. That kind of strength comes from knowing your value doesn't increase or decrease based on someone else's treatment of you. It's a quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. And when you live from that space, you don't just feel better, you look better, move better, speak better, because you're no longer operating from lack. You're operating from fullness. Fullness says, I don't need to convince anyone to choose me. It says, I am whole with or without validation. That's not arrogance, it's emotional independence. Your reaction in moments of pain sets the tone for how others see you, but more importantly, It shapes how you see you. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you're reinforcing your own belief in your strength. You're telling yourself, I am worth more than this drama. That message matters more than any apology you could ever receive. Because apologies can be shallow, but self-respect runs deep. And the more you act from that space, the less you find yourself in situations where your worth is questioned. People who know who they are don't have to demand respect, they naturally command it. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerability, especially not those who treat it carelessly. Acting from self-worth means putting boundaries in place, even when it's hard. It means saying no without guilt and walking away without fanfare. It's choosing your peace over their explanation. You don't need to know why someone acted a certain way to protect yourself from it. Waiting for clarity can become a form of self-abandonment. Self-worth says, even if I never understand what happened, I will still choose myself. That is one of the highest forms of emotional maturity. There's an illusion that being emotional shows depth or authenticity, but true emotional depth isn't about how loudly you feel, it's about how wisely you express. You can feel deeply and still respond deliberately. You can hurt deeply and still carry yourself with grace. That balance is what separates reaction from resilience. Self-worth doesn't deny emotion, it gives it a home. It allows you to feel the storm without becoming the storm, and in doing so, it protects your inner world from being dictated by outer chaos. When you act from a place of self-worth, people notice even if they don't say it. Your presence shifts. You're no longer accessible to energy that drains you. You're no longer available for half-hearted effort or disrespect. You don't need to explain why you won't tolerate certain behavior. Your boundaries become a natural extension of how you treat yourself. And when people see that you hold yourself to a high standard, they'll either rise to meet you or fall away. Either way, you win, because your value was never up for negotiation. Over time, this mindset becomes more than a reaction. It becomes your identity. You start showing up differently in every space you walk into. You no longer need to be the loudest in the room to be heard. You no longer need to over-explain to be understood. You trust that the right people will respect your silence just as much as your words. And the ones who don't, you let them go. Not out of bitterness, but out of alignment. Your peace becomes non-negotiable, and your life becomes a reflection of that standard. Ultimately, self-worth is a quiet revolution. It's the decision to honor your value, even when it's not being reflected back at you. It's the ability to sit with discomfort without losing yourself in it. It's choosing growth over validation, healing over retaliation, and presence over reaction. When you live from that place, you don't just change how you respond to pain, you change the kind of pain you do. Pain has a way of narrowing your vision. When you've been hurt, it's easy to become fixated on what went wrong, who caused it, and why it happened. That focus keeps you locked in a loop, reliving the hurt over and over. But the most empowering response isn't to analyze the pain, it's to use it as fuel for growth. Hurt can either be the thing that breaks you or the thing that builds you. The difference lies in what you do next. Instead of staying in that space of confusion and sadness, rise from it. Use it as a reason to upgrade every area of your life. Make your healing visible through action, not explanation. Let the pain refine you, not define you. When your heart breaks, it's tempting to seek revenge through words or closure through confrontation. But what actually shakes the ground beneath others is not confrontation, it's transformation. Rising quietly, consistently, and confidently disrupts expectations. Instead of making noise, you make moves. Instead of defending yourself, you develop yourself. That's the real plot twist, becoming better, stronger, and more grounded than before. You don't need to broadcast your growth. People will feel it when they see that you're no longer available for what once broke you. You're not punishing anyone, you're prioritizing yourself. You upgrade not to prove a point, but because it's what you deserve. You begin to redirect the energy once spent on overthinking into building something beautiful. Maybe it's a healthier body, a sharper mind, a new routine, or a creative project. You stop letting your identity be shaped by the wound and start shaping your future with intention. Your focus shifts from "why did this happen to me" to "what can I build from this?" And in that shift, you unlock a version of yourself that was always there, waiting beneath the pain. Every new habit becomes an act of self-respect. Every goal achieved becomes a quiet declaration: I am not stuck. I am rising. That's how growth becomes your revenge and your redemption. The upgrade isn't just external. It happens deep inside your mindset. You begin to think differently about what you deserve and what you'll no longer accept. You become more discerning with your energy, your time, your love. No longer desperate to be seen, you become selective about who gets access to your heart. That's not bitterness. It's wisdom born from experience. You realize that peace is not just the absence of chaos, but the result of careful choices. You stop settling for connections that leave you feeling unsure. The clarity that comes from healing becomes your compass, guiding you towards something more aligned with your worth. It's in the quiet moments of rebuilding that your true power reveals itself. There's a certain dignity in showing up for yourself when no one else does. You create structure where there once was instability. You build trust within yourself where it had been broken. And slowly you stop needing anything outside of yourself to feel complete. That kind of growth can't be taken away from you. It's not dependent on anyone else's behavior. It's yours. You earned it. And when others eventually notice the difference, they won't be able to name it. They'll just feel it. The strength, the calm, the shift in your presence. You stop asking questions that keep you stuck in the past. Questions like, what did I do wrong? Or why wasn't I enough? Lose their grip on your mind. You realize the answers don't matter as much as what you do. And what you do next is everything. You make different choices. You surround yourself with people who reflect your new standard. You speak to yourself with more kindness, more belief. The self-talk changes from criticism to encouragement. Your inner world begins to match the vision you have for your outer one, and it starts showing. Not because you're trying to be noticed, but because you're finally aligned. You no longer try to go back to who you were before the pain. That version of you is gone. And that's okay. In its place is someone wiser, more resilient, more self-aware. You're not healing to return to the past. You're healing to step into your future. Every scar becomes a symbol of strength, not shame. You wear your growth with pride, not defensiveness. You stop apologizing for your standards. You stop making yourself small to keep others comfortable. And without even realizing it, you become someone who wouldn't tolerate what you once accepted. That's the power of the upgrade. It's irreversible. People might try to reconnect with the old version of you, unaware that version no longer exists. They'll look for familiar patterns, the same responses, the same vulnerabilities. But what they'll find is someone new, someone who's harder to manipulate, harder to unsettle, harder to reach without genuine effort. That transformation will speak louder than any closure ever could. You don't have to explain the change, just live it. Let your evolution be your boundary. Let your growth be your silence. When they realize they no longer have access to you, that's when the confusion begins. And that's when you know you've truly risen. This transformation isn't about pretending to be unaffected. It's about allowing yourself to feel, then choosing to grow anyway. Real strength doesn't come from denying pain, it comes from rising through it. You can grieve and glow at the same time. You can cry and still commit to your growth. It's not about being unbreakable. It's about becoming whole again on your own terms. That's what makes the journey beautiful. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to keep moving forward, even if it's one step at a time. Because every step forward is a declaration. I deserve more, and I'm becoming more. Eventually, you'll look back and realize that what once broke you actually built the best version of you. The pain that tried to define you ended up refining you. And the person you become through that process, they don't chase, they don't beg, they don't prove. They simply rise. And in that rise, the glow up isn't for anyone else, it's for your own freedom. You're not waiting to be saved or seen, you've saved yourself. And now the world will have no choice but to see what you've always known. You are more than enough, and you're just getting started. There's a moment in healing when you realize you no longer have to chase clarity from people who chose confusion. The desire to explain yourself, to justify your feelings begins to fade. You no longer need the last word, the apology, or the confession. Instead, you become content with your own understanding. You make peace with the silence and let go of the need for validation. That shift is powerful. It's the moment you choose dignity over drama. When you stop feeding a cycle that runs on emotional chaos, you reclaim your control. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your peace. And in that space, people begin to feel the weight of your absence. Distance has a way of doing what words never could. When you step back from someone who once had full access to you, it sends a message without speaking. It forces them to confront a version of you that no longer waits, explains, or hopes. You become a mystery, not because you're hiding, but because you're no longer available for guessing games. When you stop showing up where you're not respected, it disrupts the dynamic. People start to notice your silence and question their role in it. It's not about manipulation. It's about preservation. You protect your energy by refusing to engage where it's not reciprocated. And that quiet absence begins to echo louder than any argument. There's something powerful about no longer being emotionally predictable. When others can't anticipate your reactions, they lose their grip on your narrative. You're no longer playing your part in a familiar cycle. You become someone who chooses silence not from weakness, but from wisdom. They expect the breakdown, the call, the fight, but what they get is distance and stillness. That's where the confusion sets in. You're no longer operating from the emotional script they've memorized. You've edited the story, rewritten the role, and stepped off the stage. And in doing so, you reclaim your identity, separate from who you were in their presence. Your ability to detach with grace becomes your greatest strength. It doesn't mean you didn't care, or that the connection didn't mean something. It means you've chosen yourself over the cycle. You've decided that clarity within yourself matters more than confusion shared with someone else. That emotional discipline requires courage. You allow yourself to feel, but you don't let the feeling take the wheel. Instead of reacting, you reflect. Instead of lashing out, you lean inward. The distance you create becomes a boundary, not a wall. It keeps the chaos out while letting your peace grow within. And from that space, healing accelerates. Eventually, you stop waiting for someone to realize your worth. You realize it on your own. And in doing so, you become unavailable for those who didn't see it the first time. You don't do it to make a statement. You do it because you've changed. Your priorities shift. Your energy is no longer invested in repairing what repeatedly broke. Instead, it's poured into what builds, nourishes, and aligns. And those who once expected the old version of you, the one who stayed, tolerated, explained, find themselves looking for someone who doesn't exist anymore. That's not revenge, that's rebirth. The most confusing thing you can do to someone who hurt you is not to retaliate, it's to evolve. It's to no longer be reachable in the way they once knew you. Your growth becomes a mirror they weren't ready to face. It reflects what they failed to value. You don't need to say, look what you lost. Your actions say it for you. And the beauty is your evolution isn't about them, it's about you. You're not acting out of spite, but out of self-awareness. You've seen what happens when you compromise your peace, and you've decided never to go back there. That decision changes everything. Your energy speaks before you do, and when it's no longer anxious or chasing, it shifts the entire interaction. You radiate presence without needing to prove your point. People sense the difference. You walk lighter, smile deeper, stand taller, not because someone finally gave you permission, but because you gave it to yourself. The confusion others feel is simply a reflection of how unfamiliar this version of you is to them. But to you, It feels like coming home. No more questioning, no more doubting, just clarity, rooted in self-respect. Distance doesn't always mean physical space. Sometimes it's emotional, spiritual, and energetic. You no longer engage at the same emotional frequency. You've elevated, and that naturally filters who and what can stay in your life. You stop holding on to half-love, broken promises, or hollow gestures. You crave depth, stability, and consistency. And if it's not there, you don't chase it, you release it. That calm detachment becomes your filter. It simplifies everything. You don't force, you align. And what doesn't match your alignment is no longer your responsibility. There's a peace that comes from knowing you don't need to explain your absence to those who didn't appreciate your presence. Your growth doesn't require permission or applause. You move differently because you've healed differently. What used to trigger you now teaches you. What once drained you now drives you. And as others scramble to understand the change, you keep moving forward, rooted in self-trust. That forward motion becomes the ultimate response, not to hurt them, but to honor you. And in doing so, you become the one who walked away with everything that matters: peace, clarity, and power. In the end, the most confusing thing you can do isn't to punish someone, it's to protect yourself so fiercely that their access is permanently revoked. Not because you hate them, but because you love yourself more. You chose freedom over familiarity, evolution over explanation.